champion. His negative traits were forgotten, all the failures of the age were blamed on other men, and all the successes attributed to him. As a result of this extreme adulation, even the most scholarly historians have found it difficult to maintain their historical objectivity. The most famous example is the declaration by the English historian K.B. Macfarlane that Henry V was the greatest man that ever ruled England. Many other writers have presented Henry as the typical medieval warrior hero, regardless of his solemnity and profoundly religious nature. So although this book is about a man and his time, it is also about challenging certain assumptions that we make about him. I do think he was an extraordinary man, in that he demonstrated phenomenal organizational skills, focus, determination, resilience, leadership, and above all else, religious conviction. But I also feel he was a deeply flawed individual. He lacked the simpler qualities of compassion, warmth, and the understanding of human frailty that one naturally looks for in all men, yeomen and paupers as well as kings. Macfarlane, preaching from a pulpit of academic prejudice against historical biography, failed to draw attention to these shortcomings of his character. Thus, my verdict on Henry's supposed greatness is very different from Mr. Macfarlane's. There are already dozens of books on Henry V and dozens more on Agincourt, many of them by academic specialists who have devoted decades to the study of Henry and his battles. So it is fair to ask, what can I hope to do historically over and above their collective efforts? What are the aims of this book? First, it is a continuation of my examination of the nature of personality and political ambition in the Middle Ages, continuing these themes from my earlier books about Roger Mortimer, Edward III, and Henry IV. It is thus the fourth volume of my biographical history of later medieval England. Second, I have tried to give a fuller and more representative view of Henry's non-military activities in this year, especially his religious deeds, which tend to be very briefly noted as examples of his spirituality in full-length biographies and books about Agincourt. Third, I have paid much more attention than usual to the characters and social movements that formed the backdrop to Henry's ambitions in 1415, especially with regard to the papal conflicts and the burning of Jan Hus at the Council of Constance. It is important to remember that, at the same time as Henry was trying to reunite the Kingdom of England and France, many people were trying to reunite the Church, and Henry himself drew parallels between the two unifying movements. Fourth, I have tried to show how Henry's activities were part of a wider attempt to unite religious and political authority at the time, a European-wide movement towards establishing the divine right of kings, and in many ways the basis for the shift towards absolutism in the following century. The most significant innovation in this book is its calendar structure. One might call this an experiment in historical form. I have asked whether we can arrive at a different view of a historical subject through presenting well-known historical facts in a radically different way. As will be seen, a calendar-based form does permit many new insights. It forces a greater degree of accuracy with regard to dates and developmental processes. Repetition of key aspects of Henry's behaviour appear in proportion to the evidence, and juxtapositions of important events go a long way to explaining some of his decisions. Above all else, the integration of all the various aspects of his life, the religious and the social, the judicial and the political, allow a vision of Henry that is very different from the patriotic stories with which we grew up. The book, therefore, is a demonstration of how a different framework may be used to see the past differently, and how we may obtain a new projection, to borrow a term from geography, of the past by presenting historical events in a more chronologically